Good morning, everyone from Medellín. I want to start today by mentioning and honoring a man that I worked with, must be over a decade now, and Fabrice Ernst, and he was in the time he reached out to me. He was working also as a sexual healer, a gigolo, with women, and a very sweet man, a very kind man, really dedicated to being in service. You know, he really wanted to make women happy, please them, help them out, and he's very sweet, very kind. He was also very troubled, you know. It came with a big weight on his shoulders, and I saw that what he was doing was depleting him in a way. We collaborated, and he even he talked about me to his mom, Mary Lou, and then offered to her a time with me, you know. So I started working with her as well. This is over a decade ago. His mom and we stayed in contact sporadically over Facebook. And yesterday, she sent me a message that her son Fabrice had committed suicide, and he had been living with her for the last couple of years. And she said he was very depressed and stepped out of life, you know. And I was like, wow. And then I think back in like the last couple of years, and I have people that I know or know of, you know, at least 5-6 stories in like less than 2 years' time, you know. And to the point that I'm thinking, wow, it's a big thing, you know. That's a lot of people. That's a crisis. And
there very much is a crisis amongst boys and men today. Not just boys and men, but that's what we're talking about. Very high suicide rates. The drug addiction in a lot of ways is suicide. You know, you know the path that you're on. In fact, I was watching a podcast late last night, in the middle of the night, about the phenomenon of, and I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Gabor Mate talking about this, but went to the funeral. Yeah, it was. Went to the funeral of, I think it was a client that he was helping. And she was 35, she was a drug addict. She'd got off drugs for 6 months. And then she went back, and I don't know if it was heroin or what it was, but she made the mistake of going back to the dose that she was drugging herself out 6 months prior. But now she didn't have the built up tolerance, and it just killed her. And at the funeral were a bunch of her friends that were all on drugs as well. And, you know, he knew they're going to come to the funeral and they're going to go right back to using, you know. And one of the points he was making was that addiction's not a choice, you know, because the power that the addiction has over you. But what he asks, and suggests asking, is not why the addiction, but why the pain, you know. And he's talking about the trauma that's underlying the pain.
Not why the addiction, but why the pain.
Yeah, like what was the source of the pain?
Yes.
And this is where we're going on today's conversation, is looking at the crisis in connection, you know, and the crisis of separation that begins for many.
Okay.
For many of those who end up depressed, suicidal, addicted. It begins as an infant.
Yes. Before you go there, I would like to say, like, if we're looking at, I think it's a brilliant question, why the pain instead of why the addiction? And we had some experiences where there is no, or communities, there's places in the world where there is no depression, where there is no suicide, and maybe that informs us in a way about what could be one of the sources, reasons of that pain. Right? I mean, we'll come back to the. Okay, we'll say that first. We're in the Masai Mara with the Masai warriors last year, and with a friend Comyn and his 12 children running around, and I always say I was very surprised in those 5 days that we were there. None of the children ever cried like you have in the West, like children. Wah, wah. You never hear it, you know. And it was a very profound experience to me, you know. Like on the flip side of that, you also see incredible connections there. You know, I was joking just before the call that I'm sleeping in a dung hut, and when I would wake up, you know,
sleeping in an elephant dung hut.
Yeah. I would wake up and there's one of the children just standing there, you know, next to the bed and holding my leg, you know, just connected physically, you know.
Yeah.
And he's just there. The kid is just there, you know. You wake up and there's people. There's always people. I remember when I said, you know,
the kids are always there.
But they're always there.
Yeah.
I remember I had a bottle of water and I said, "Where's my bottle of water?" You know, and people like, well, I don't know. Someone commented, I think a Western, but there's no your bottle here. It doesn't exist. You know,
yeah.
It's from everyone.
Yeah,
so
there's no my stuff.
There's no my stuff.
My space.
No. And so that gives me a little insight of what connection, community, it could be one of the ways to avoid, you know, and could be one of the reasons, the missing of could be one of the reasons that we in the West have so much depression and suicide. And then this morning you talked about where it all starts, you know, and it was very telling to me. What you said about when children in the West cry.
Yeah, so it's probably the more popular idea about raising infants. You know, what do you do when your infant cries? You know, when it cries out in the middle of the night. There are different theories that all basically echo the same thing, and that is that we need to train the child to sleep at night and let it cry itself to sleep. You know, and the infant, like I'm not an expert on infants. You know, I've never had the infant cry, and it has to be me that's, you know, needs to go and care for him. But I do remember being with my niece some years ago, and I was visiting her, staying with her, and she had just put her baby, it was her first and only child, she just put her infant baby to sleep and left it in the room, and the baby started crying, you know, and she's like, you know, "Uncle Mike, what should I do? You know, I've been told I should let it cry itself to sleep, you know, but I said, Ashley, you know what to do. You know what to do. It's instinctual. You're the mother. You carried this infant in your womb for 9 months. You know what to do." You know, and immediately she went to her baby to pick it up and hold it and be with it, you know. And I read a book, and I had read the book previously called The Continuum Concept. I highly recommend it. And my buddy O talked about this a lot, and he had been like a critical care nurse for years, and he'd spent a lot more time with indigenous people than I had. But on my travels, I've seen it for the first couple years of a newborn's life, an infant's life, it is heart to heart, body to body, and many times skin to skin with usually an older female, but another human. You'll see, at the school that I stayed at in Uganda for months, there'd be women out working in the field, hoeing the weeds or picking the vegetables. And many of them would have strapped to their back their infant child. And it wasn't viewed as a burden or as something to complain about. It was just...
multitasking.
It's just what you do.
Yeah.
And another thing I would often see is a little girl around, say, 4 to 8 years old that has her infant brother or sister in her arms.
Yeah.
Like she wants to do it. It's not like, hey, you go take care of your,
right,
your baby brother or sister. No, it's natural. It's natural for the infant, and it's natural for at least the young girl.
Like it was natural for that little kid to just stand there next to my bed and just touch me.
Yeah.
It's just, for me, that was like strange.
Yes.
Yes. But it must be natural, because otherwise this kid wouldn't do it.
Yeah. That's connection, man.
Yes.
And it's the kind that we don't get on social media. It's not that kind of being connected,
right,
being hyper connected. But it starts, and O would really pontificate about this, in the Western world, in a Western hospital. The doctor wants to have he wants his client, pregnant woman, to give birth on his schedule. So if the baby's not coming, he gives her some pills, I forget what they're called, to kind of force the baby out, or gives a C-section. So, and then the C-section happens on his timetable. And this is what it's all about with an infant, because mom has to get up and go to work in the morning, and so does dad. So they can't be up all night with the kids. So the kid has to get on the program, man. The infant needs to get trained. It's time for work. It's time for sleep. Living in this very unnatural environment, this modern environment. The infant needs training from the moment he leaves the womb.
No, before. He's already there. It's like he doesn't want to come out yet. And you're getting on the program already.
Right.
Already,
yeah,
before you're born.
Yeah. You're going to be born on time, you little son of a bitch.
Jesus. And so, I mean, it's...
And let me just say, this goes back, like you can read in the history of Europe about how, especially like in the Middle Ages, their view towards infants and children was just diabolical.
Uh-huh.
And the Catholic Church at the time, to my understanding, viewed any kind of like physical connection, affection, not just talking about sex, but just normal human joy and touch and happiness, or the body itself, as like sinful and of this world, of this worldly,
yes,
this evil world. And it goes so far as, in many cases, the newborn child was not considered a real human until, I can't remember if it was
right,
1 month old or 1 year old. And in that time, you can just like kill it or let it die or toss it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't considered a real human. And oftentimes, they made these children go and live with someone else that didn't care for them, because it was not good for this parent-child bond. That was viewed as a sinful thing, a bad thing. And so like this goes deep, this runs deep in our psyche. However, thank God our instincts run far deeper,
Well, imagine how that must do to the psyche when you're just born and you're taught, so you're crying and nobody comes, and so the number one lesson you get in life is nobody's coming.
No one's coming.
No one is coming.
No one's coming. No one cares.
Yes. You got to do it yourself.
Don't even bother crying out for help.
Yes.
Just get used to it.
And so while that feeds into the independence and your, say, self-reliance and creative force and all the good things that come from that, there's beauty that comes from that. From independence, from teaching people, from trying to or creating the world you want to live in. There's beauty that comes from that. But we lost something along the way. There's a price to pay when you're so stressing the independence, and when you give up for that the connection, when you give up for that the community.
Well, yeah, and there doesn't need to be a dichotomy between independence and raising a healthy a healthy baby, a healthy child. And probably the healthiest ones become the most truly independent, because they're not traumatized. They can really freely interact with others, with bonding, with connection, with a healthy connection. So, yeah, this is a deep conversation. It could go on for hours. One of the things that O used to talk about, and it's also in the continuum concept, is the idea that there's even a biological expectation that someone is going to come, someone is going to be there. It's as if, as in the early years of childhood, the infant delegates out the regulation of his nervous system, because it's something that he can't do for himself yet. So, if he's skin to skin with his mother, the mother knows instantly when something's not right, instantly, because she's co-regulating. She's right there with him, like it's one nervous system. And this is the infant that she's held in her womb for 9 months. Its entire existence has been inside the mother. And what we tend to do is you see these images or in the movies, whatever, the doctor holding the baby up by one foot and smacking it, so it starts breathing.
Welcome to the world.
You need to breathe on schedule, you little son of a bitch, And then the baby starts crying, and maybe the mother gets to hold it for a minute, maybe not, and then it's often put in this separate, in an incubator.
My father.
In something designed to be an artificial mother, when the mother is right there wanting to hold her infant.
My father was telling me last couple of weeks how he was so pissed off, when I was born, that they took me away from my mom, He was so... and he says, "Where is he?" And he's rushing to the place where they keep the babies, And the nurse would even say to him, you won't even recognize him. You don't know which one is yours.
Wow.
You won't know which one is yours.
Wow.
And my father said, she opened the door. That one is mine. I hope he was right. Because he took me. But it is incredible, It is incredible how we give up that connection, how we give up that natural bond, We
break it.
We break that natural bond. We don't explore and thrive in that natural connection. And then we also don't have community, because it continues, We're taught to be independent. We're taught to be individualistic. We don't connect with our family, with our schoolmates. We don't really have that. We give up connection and community, and there's an incredible price to pay.
Well, I would just say again, I don't think the independence is the problem, but it's the trauma of the lack of the bonds and the lack of community, the lack of it's the missing of all that.
Right.
But I know what you mean. I want to make the point, because I don't want to have people who are watching think this is something that's against independence.
Right. No, it's not.
But I think great independence is born of great and healthy community and connection. I mean, the strongest, healthiest person out there feels like they have their whole community behind them. You know, they feel like I'm here on behalf of my people. You know, that's the most powerful way to go out into the world, to start something new, to make your stand, to stand out, is to be there on behalf of your people. You know, for men who feel they don't have a sense of purpose, or they lack confidence, or they lack motivation or discipline or all these things, you know, oftentimes what they're lacking is their people behind them, you know, like really feeling like I'm here on behalf of my people. I believe that's the most powerful way to come at being a man in the world.
Amazing. So what we're trying to do, what we're doing is, well, I know for one, I'm reclaiming the pivotal part that our connection, our relationships play in our life. You know, it's a scientific fact now, after a 75-year-old Harvard study, that the number one predictor of your happiness and health is quality relationships. Nothing else matters. Nothing else comes even close to the importance of your quality relationship. The relationship to yourself, the relationship to your family, to your friends, the connections you have with your lovers, the communities you belong to, the tribes, even the sense of connection you got with humanity. You know, when that is strong, you will be happier, you will be healthier, you live longer. And so, yeah, it's so obvious, and it's such a tragedy, it's such a crisis, you know, that I want to play my part in restoring that, in creating tribes and connection and community, and focusing on it, you know, and be there for my people.
Yeah, and so to bring this full circle, you know, you mentioned your friend that had committed suicide. Addiction, depression, suicide, this is all tied to the separation that so many of us are facing, and men often don't feel like they have a way out. You know, suicide is a way out. They don't feel like they have a way back to their people, back to connection, or maybe don't even know what's missing, not how to go about it. And this is why we need elders. We need men who are going to stand up, take on the challenge, the responsibility, you could even say the burden of that, but the joy of that. You know, it's a profound honor and joy to get to play that role for someone, and it can be a burden as well. In future episodes, we'll talk about staying, being the one who, you know, an elder being the one who stays, or it's a way to be an elder, being the one who stays. We'll also talk about going back for a brother, and yes, how to be an elder. The people in your life, they need you. They need you to step up and reclaim your people, reclaim elderhood, reclaim honor, reclaim brotherhood. And deep in your heart and your soul, you need it as well.
Yes. And if right now you're in a space where you feel you got no one to talk to, I want to, you know, extend an invitation. You can always reach out to at least me or to us.
Yes, and soon we'll be starting a Facebook group for men who are ready to claim next level leadership, next level responsibility in their life. Take something on big that's on behalf of their people. So stay tuned.
See you tomorrow.